Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Reacher, Season 2, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So our opening has us finding out that Robert Patrick's character, Langston, ends up he is the one behind Calvin's death, Franz's death, which surprised me because, like I said, I kept stressing the point last episode. I figured, could we find out that him and AM are connected? I thought those were two separate things. No, they're all connected. I guess I should have figured there wouldn't be that many threads going, but I because it's like everything's going to ultimately end up connecting. Nothing's going to be separate. Everything's going to matter and be connected. But I still thought those were two separate things. Because the way he responded to the assassin that he sent to Atlantic City, Soroyan, like I thought because of that, I was like, oh, he doesn't know that. So, because what I brought it up at the time, like I thought he didn't know about Orozco or Sanchez being dead because he was waiting for them all to get together so he can pop all the rest of the group. Because at that point, at the bare minimum, well, they already knew about Franz being dead. I thought they didn't have anything to do with that, but they directly had, so of course they would. And then like Swan's the anomaly, which we'll get to Swan later. But that's why I was like, oh, must not know the rest of the group. At least two other members are dead. But then it turns out this is all connected. So not unless someone else killed Orozco and Sanchez and Langston just had no idea about it because his conversation made it seem like that's what threw me off of like, oh, he wants them dead, but he's not the one that's killing them. It was like, no, he is, because he's the one responsible for killing Franz. He's even the one that took the tire iron, not even tire iron, the metal bar, the crowbar to his leg. Well, probably more so iron than metal, but yeah, it took that crowbar or whatever to his leg and messed him up. And even when he was throwing him out the plane, he was like, yeah. He's like, I just want to see the look on your face when the big guy finds out. But then later on, Langston's like, who's the big guy? So I guess he wasn't well versed in their group. I wonder, was he not even aware of the special 10, the 110th? Like maybe he wasn't even aware of them until after he killed Franz. Maybe that's when he looked into the group more. Or because the big guy, they brought it up, I think maybe last episode. Probably, no, it might have even been episode 1 where they brought up that was Franz's like nickname for Reacher in particular. So now I'm curious. And it makes that scene even sadder because you know where it was heading, and it's just like, man, and just him like seeing what was happening, and he was just like, all right, bracing himself for what was about to happen. He knew he was dead either way, and he wasn't going to give up any information because at the time Langston was like, oh, we already know about your buddies in Atlantic City, Sanchez and Orozco. So it's like, that's why I'm like, I don't think. Because he said, because the line specifically was, wait for them all to get together and then kill them. So like I said, he didn't know about Orozco and Sanchez being dead. So either that's an AM decision or that might be, I'm jumping the gun here a little bit. Not unless that was a Swan decision, which we'll get to later on, like I said. But I don't know what to fully make of that. So it becomes that conversation of who knew what when. So did he not know about the 110th when he went after him? But it's like we find out later on this is all connected to New. I'm jumping the gun a lot, but we know that it's connected to New Age, which he worked there with Swan. Did Swan never disclose his past with the 110, the 110th? Because it's like, how would he not know about the big guy? Why wouldn't he immediately think of why wouldn't that click in his head? So he must not have known at the time because maybe Swan never told them anything about him working with the 110th, and they only found out after the fact, maybe. So like I said, that's where it comes into the who knew what when type of situation, because AM's been all over the place, so I don't know if he really is in a position to really take time out of his schedule to like kill someone in such an elaborate way, like throwing them out of a helicopter. It takes time, and he's constantly on the move. Yes, he's killed people, let's not get that twisted, but it's like that's a lot to go out of your way to do. So either way, we have the we're picking up where the last episode left off for our group, where Reacher goes and buys a whole bunch of weapons, which I love that the guy's like, well, there's kind of a 7-day waiting period. And it is that complicated thing where you're like, it's like when you see it in shows and you're in the confines of like, oh yeah, like the heroes getting guns. Like we know Reacher's a good guy; he's going to kill some bad guys. But you're also like, it's kind of scary when you think about like, yeah, there's probably people who do that in real life too, who don't have such altruistic intentions with their guns. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of like in the confines of a fictional story, you can enjoy it, but then you think about the real world implications of that, you're just like, ugh. So. I mean, because I think that's a different conversation when you're here in the United States versus other countries. So it kind of has a different like connotation to it a little bit. So once again, it's just like you can't help but like draw. There's too much of that in the real world, so you can't help but like be kind of snapped out of it. Like like for an action show and everything, and you're like, yeah, like let our guys like illegal kind of like supersede the red tape and get some guns immediately to go kill some bad guys. But like I said, real world implications of it. Let's not drag this down with like real world stuff, but like it just can't help but have it pop in your head. But either way, Reacher's like buying the guns off the guy. It's just like, because it's like, oh yeah, what was it? Jersey law was basically like, oh, you can like, give it to like a friend or something. He's like, hey, I'm Joe, like I'm a friend or whatever. I'm curious what the last name he used, because I was like, maybe he combined different names or whatever. Well, not unless like his brother had a different name. Well, because obviously he went by, because he used the name Joe specifically, but that might have just been like, once again, his aliases are like baseball players, so it could have easily just been a situation of like it just happened. But it feels a little poetic to use the name Joe, but whatever the case may be. But bought the guns off the guy, and he's just like, yeah, sure, you can bring him back in like, you don't keep him from like an 8-hour period. He's like, yeah, but time is relative, like things are always happening in an 8-hour period. So he's like, well, I'd have to be around you while you're using them, because you're using them for sports or hunting, right? And it's like, yeah, both. And it's like, here, is this enough to have you bring us together in spirit? We'll have you with us in spirit, Frank. And he just takes the wad. You could tell by the look when Reacher was packing up the guns. He's almost like, did I make a massive mistake doing this? It's like, I'm getting a lot of cash, but this is probably going to come back to fuck me. Like, he had that look on his face like, I might have just fucked up. So, but either way, the team's locked and loaded. I love O'Donnell complaining, because he's like, I want my Glock 17. I love the feel of it, It's like, yeah, you're not that good of a shot. You're average at best. It's like, yeah, but what about that shot I took? Dixon, back me up. It's like, oh, that was a great shot. It was an extremely lucky shot. So it's like, yeah, you're not that good. So, but as they were doing their thing, they end up getting pulled over by a cop. It's like, that's a little suspicious. I was like, it probably has to be Russo. And lo and behold, it is. Like, he had people on the lookout for. He knew eventually, because it turns out he knew exactly what vehicle they were driving, because he knew after what happens, I knew you'd get out of Dodge really quickly, so all I had to do was like follow you. And then he saw the make and model of the car and the license plate of the car they rented whenever. It's like, the guy's really good at what he does, so he arrests him. And I love O'Donnell tries to play lawyer, and it's like, oh, Rutger, really? Like, yeah, I went to like I think he was joking later on. Reacher's like, yeah, the 91st best school in the country or some shit like that, or just maybe they're just like ranked the 91st school in the country. But yeah, Russo, he's kind of got some edge to him, but I think he's going to be kind of playing it seems like he's the Finley of this season. He's kind of like I think he's just kind of like a hard edge kind of New York cop, and I love that whole bit where they were like, is this the toys in the back of your car? It's like, what is this for the kiddies on the playground? He's like, hey, don't even joke about that shit. Don't, I'm assuming it's got like a kid assumptions. Maybe it's kind of like, whereas he made the assumption last season about Finley being divorced, turned out to be the other option. His wife sadly died. I'm thinking we might be dealing with a situation where he's a father, him and his wife maybe divorced type of situation. I'd assume it feels like, I don't know, it could be an uncle thing, but I feel like that's probably more so a dad situation. But we'll have to wait to see. But yeah, he's a little bit of a hard ass, but the fact of the matter is, he is a good guy, and he's like, right, I'm piecing together this whole thing, so let's work together, because it's unclear. And they're initially like, well, we don't know if he's a good guy or not. It seems like he's a good guy through and through. I hope it doesn't end up being one of those situations, because this could easily be one of those stories like, hey, everything worked out with Finley. Finley survived, but there's also a strong possibility that, sadly, God, sadly, I'm like, sorry, Russo doesn't make it out of this season. That's a strong possibility. I also, cause I thought about this last episode. I didn't say anything, but I was like, oh, it's funny. Like, they met up with Dixon after they dealt with Russo, so they weren't in the scene together. But there's two scenes where they're in the same scene together. Where with Dixon and Russo. I keep stumbling on his name. Sorry. I wonder if it's the first time Dominic and Serinda have. I wonder if it's the first time they've worked together since Breakout Kings back in the day, or have they worked together subsequently since? I don't know. Stuff like that I'm always curious about. So it's like them being in this. They don't really have any interactions in any of the scenes, but I do like them being in the same scene. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of dope and interesting. But anyway, tangents and all that aside, I think Reacher and Russo are going to get along. Once again, it's a parallel to his relationship with Finley. It's like, but obviously, like, he's got a more harder edge to him than Finley. Finley was like very prim and proper and like was just didn't even want to cuss and stuff like that. But it's like, nah, Russo's like the complete opposite, calling him an asshole and stuff like that. Like, yeah, because Finley didn't deal with Reacher, didn't like tolerate Reacher's shit either, but like Russo tolerates it even less so. But it's supposed to be a similar dynamic of we get off on the wrong foot, we don't like each other, but then the fact of the matter is he's like, yeah, I'll unhandcuff you and I will whoop your ass right now because you sucker punched me. He's like, no, I didn't sucker punch you. The airbag sucker punched you. I just kicked your ass. It's like, all right, I'm gonna uncuff you, and because when this is all said and done, me and you are gonna duke it out, and I'm gonna lay your ass out. So it's like, okay, sure, if you think so. So when it's all said and done, they are cooperating together because Russo knows what this is meant for them and he wants to cooperate with them. He doesn't want them kind of going all rogue and stuff. So it's like, hey, let's work together in this because I want this stuff resolved just like you want justice for your friends. So I know that's the one thing we got in common. So let's get this done. They end up presenting him with all the AM aliases, and they kind of still keep some stuff close to the vest because it turns out they missed something at Franz's office, that there was something that was set up to be printed at the printer, but it was out of ink, so it didn't finish printing, and it turns out AM is on some kind of terrorist list or whatever, and I forgot which one it was. It might have been, it was Sanchez had like written a message or whatever at the bottom of it about this guy. So now even Odell's like, did they get mixed up in some terrorist thing? And it's like, maybe it wouldn't be the first time something we thought was smaller, we thought was one thing, turned into something more massive. And this flashbacks to a case where they were investigating like I don't think he was a petty officer. Like, what was his position or whatever? He was like some officer in the military or whatever, ended up getting killed, and they kind of directly connected to some drugs that he might have stolen. But Reacher kind of starts wondering if this has some correlation to the flashback bit from last episode, the case Dixon was looking into about the missing fuel. That, right, we know some stuff might have been snuck in with the Humvees. Maybe there's some correlation because he had Dixon. He's like, yo, pull those files. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what that ends up turning out into and what that turns out to be. So I brought it up like that was such a very specific case, and the fact is they're focusing on it. Nothing's by accident. It's all relative. Because even the flashbacks last season where we're like those stuff with Reacher and his brother when they were younger, they were all lessons that Reacher like applied to present day, and a lot of it was just built on who he is, but it also played a crucial role in just kind of like some of the themes and elements of the case of season one, and just like his approach to it and his perspective on things. So the same thing's here, but it's like it's got to be more than that. It's going to be that case in particular. Like I said, because I thought I was under the impression that the Langston and AM stuff was separate. It's all connected, so this is most likely going to be connected too in some shape or form. Sadly, AM is very good at what he does, so the moment he dropped in, like they had flagged all his aliases, but the moment he came into the airport, he noticed the guy, and he was like, I was like, is that supposed to be a cop? And I was like, yeah, you're standing out a little too much, and for someone who's well-trained enough will be able to pick up on it. So he noticed not only one, but at least two cops, and he's like, all right, something's up here. So he didn't even bother checking in, so he lets Langston know, like, yo, I got burned. I don't know if they have any direct... Well, if they had some direct correlation and connection to you, if they really knew what this was all about, you'd be having to basically talk to your lawyer right now, if that was the case, because they'd be bringing out the heat on you. So, whatever deal is going on with a 650 for 100K, that whole situation I guess that has to deal with because I didn't notice this until until they showed the recap. But the guy Ian was talking to last episode apparently said weapons. So I don't know if he's getting weapons ready for whatever job and deal that because like he is a weapons dealer. So I don't know if new technology is like I don't know if we're gonna find out it's like some almost I don't know if it's going to end up being one of those storyline things of they are selling arms to fuel fights in other countries just so the US can get involved. Like I don't know if it's like some trying to get some private defense contract or some shit like that. I don't know if it's going to be that type of story beat or not because they're specifically new technologies and I'm like we have no idea what that's all about. We do know because at the time we didn't necessarily correlate. It doesn't really show until the end of the episode that Langston's connected. But either way, they went to Neely and Dixon went to see new technology. Went to new technologies and they met Miss Burns, who is played by Christina Cox. I was like, oh, what's that? Because I was like, I've seen her before. I know that actress. I was like, what was her name? There's a show she did back in the day. It's been quite a while ago called Blood Ties. It was a vampire show specifically on Lifetime. It was kind of wild. Like you wouldn't expect that type of show to be on Lifetime, but it was. But yeah, that's the show I always associate with because I really like that show. It was short lived. I think it only technically got 2 seasons. I think. I could be mistaken, but either way, like I said, tangents and all that aside. I kind of had a funny feeling about her, and it seems like that was kind of once again. It's just this when it comes to crime dramas, I never trust anybody. I'm always suspicious of like who's going to be the real bad person behind this or whatever. Because she gave them an address to Soroyan, the assassin they killed last episode, and they called up to be like, "Is this actually Soroyan's address?" I was like, "Why were they doing that?" I didn't get it until they explained it later on to Russo. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. But it's like, right. And then it's like, oh, we got stopped by the hardware store. I'm like, why are you making bombs? Is that a smoke bomb? It's like, no, it's a straight up pipe bomb because some of those people got shrapnel and it looked like literal nails exploded into them. Which obviously when I see like stuff like that, it makes me think of like, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is like The Last of Us and stuff like that. But tangents, putting that aside, I was like, oh, there were people in there waiting for you. But I like that being the thing of, right, if it was a fake address or whatever, like either Soroyan came in there trying to actually survey his real target, so he'd give a fake address. But if it really was where he was supposed, if that actually was his real address, that if he stayed there, there's no way an assassin would leave a trail like that intentionally, like. It would have to be intentional, meaning if once we got that address, whoever it was wanted to make sure we went there so we'd be taken care of. So they went in, guns blazing, ready to like pop people off. First guy came out the house like in flames. Team breaks apart and just starts taking people down left and right. I love the whole Dixon and O'Donnell situation upstairs where it's like she ends up shooting a guy, but it turns out, or he's got a bulletproof vest on, so it turns into a shootout. It turns into like a slugfest between all of them. Even O'Donnell pulling out the blade. Well, he didn't pull out his blade; he just pulled out the brass. Well, no, he did because he stabbed the guy, then pulled out the good old brass knuckles. I love that whole situation, and because Dixon kept unloading into the guy, but the problem was he was wearing the bulletproof vest in the heat of the moment. Aiming for a headshot is kind of like, I don't think it's worth it. It's like you're better going for like you're trained. I know cops are. I would assume military people are trained to go for the center mass of it all. But luckily, O'Donnell came through and he was like, right, the donkey's ass, meet the banjo, because the whole point about him not being able to hit a donkey's ass with a banjo or something like that earlier on. So love bringing that bit back, and I love we didn't even check in on Neely. I'm blanking on names right now. Sorry. Just like we just have her like coming downstairs. It's like, oh, so things. Yeah, only person up there was this guy and his this asshole's dead buddy. So yeah, it's clear upstairs. So that was taken care of. They dealt with a guy that was outside. I love Reacher like chasing after the car. I also love just like, and it makes sense because I'm assuming out of anyone, she's the only one that's like the long range person. So for her acting like the tactical support of like, oh, I'm on top of the roof, Reacher head west, caught up with the guy after throwing like a barbecue at the car, and the guy dies of a heart attack. And he's like, I love it. Reacher's like, really? Asshole. It's like, you were here to make sure we got killed, and you have the audacity to fucking die of a heart attack, you piece of shit. I loved like how angry he was about that. He's like, you asshole, how dare you die. And I love that he walks by the neighbor. He's like, hi, miss, whatever her name was, when he had talked on the phone. It's like, yeah, they're in the house putting out fires. Nothing could be found there. These guys were just hired muscle, but the guy that died of the heart attack was connected to new age technology. So we also had some, because there was some interesting developments on the information front. I mean, it led to this really interesting conversation between Neely and Dixon, where it's like, obviously, Dixon had made some comment about like Reacher being, and also, his situation downstairs. But she was also talking about how she never thought what was happening between them, what happened. Like, she never thought that would happen. It's like, Neely is like, dude, we all knew. But she's like, no, but I never figured. She's like, I thought he wasn't interested. So, because of the way Reacher handles things. And he's so very distant, except for Neely. And that is interesting, because I brought that up previously. Why I think I brought that up in season 1. Out of anyone in the group, why is it that he is like, why is he so close to Neely? Because even Neely's like, I don't know. She's like, I'm comfortable with the distance. I like things the way they are. Because she's like, I'm the only one in the group that doesn't really press him too much. She did a little bit about the whole Dixon of it all, but she also like did that jokingly because she knows how uncomfortable it makes him. But it's like, yeah, she did it a little bit with the whole Roscoe situation last season too. But it's like, for her, it's like, yeah, I tend to not press him about stuff like, oh, how you feeling, or like wanting to talk. Like, she's like, she likes the comfortable distance. She's comfortable with it as well. I mean, she's a little like him in some capacity too, because like even Miss Burns, when she was introducing herself, she shook Dixon's hands and she tried to go shake Neely's, but Neely was like, yeah, I don't do that, but no thanks, I don't really do that, but it's nice to meet you. So she has her things about, I think, human. I don't know, because the guy at the bar they beat up last episode, Sanchez's girlfriend's friends, like, she was like, yeah, don't touch me. So I'm like, I guess she doesn't really do human contact well. Like, maybe that's kind of like one of her like no zones of like, she doesn't like being touched by anyone. I don't know if that was what that was or not. Because it's interesting too, because if you think about it, she like, I didn't talk about it at the time because I forgot to. In season 1, they were in that strip club situation, and that guy was touching. Like, Reacher was going to like deal with the guy that was very handsy with the stripper, but like Neely got up and laid him down and be like, "Don't put." She said no, so don't put your hand. Like, it might be something else where Neely's just like, I don't like human contact in general. Maybe there's something deeper to that. I don't know. It just, if you connect that with the like her telling the guy get his hands off of her, like it. I mean, it could have just been like, I don't know. It feels like there could be more to that. Maybe not. But my point was like, her and Reacher are just very like, I think she presents a little more, she's more friendly than Reacher is, a little more approachable than he is, but it seems like there's something there. I'm just not sure what it is. But she had even said like, yeah, because even Dixon was like, yeah, how is it that you and Reacher like are such good pals? Like, you're the person he got closest to amongst the 1/10, and even Neely's like, I don't know, I have no idea how the hell that happened. It's just like, yeah, I mean, Reacher, we could go like days, weeks, months, even years, like not talking, and then like I just know that no matter what happens, Reacher's always going to have my back. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Like I brought up earlier, I was always curious why Neely was the only one he kept in contact with. It's a very specific dynamic that, like I said, they even in the past they hit it off immediately. So, but either way, Dixon ends up figuring out like what the numbers on the pages actually means. She's like realizes that it's by days, and it's like the 26 day. Like, if you're working 6 days a week, in a month, the fact of the matter is some months would have, you'd have like 26 days, some would have 27, just depending on the month. And she's saying that these 7 pages are like the last 7 months. So whatever these numbers are, these quantities, they were good in beginning in the first page, and then when you go to the 7th page, they get worse and worse. So we have no idea what this is correlating to. I'd assume this is whatever this had something would have to have something to do with the new age situation, but just not curious what it is. Whatever it is that AM, whatever service he's bringing to Langston. Because AM's going to need a new identity because they've all been burned. He's in a taxi, which I'm like, it's kind of interesting how loudly you're talking. I mean, once again, some people bring that up in TV shows. I think it's like the conversations happen a lot more quieter, but you can't really do that on a TV show necessarily. So you make the dialogue audible, but really in the context of the scene, it's probably not that audible. It's probably just like, or maybe it says like, right, the guy's minding his own business, or maybe he's going to eventually kill the taxi driver. I don't know. You're not going into details, but you did mention like, yeah, there were a whole bunch of cops. My aliases have been burnt. You're saying that near the taxi driver, so it's kind of like you're probably going to remove him from the equation. But he goes by, I don't know if it's like a doctor's office of like, oh, we can make you change. I don't know if it's like a plastic surgeon or whatever. I don't know if he plans on killing the guy because like the guy looks relatively enough like him. He's like, oh, I'm gonna kill him and steal his identity and stuff. Maybe that's where that scene was kind of indicating where things might be going next for AM. But either way, with all this said and done, in the aftermath of the whole Soroyan's place like being destroyed and stuff, you had Russo being not too happy about them doing what they did, but he covered up for them. He was like, yeah, I got a statement from the neighbor, and in my report, I was wrong about your proportions. But he's like, I don't like doing that. Don't put me in that situation again. We got to work together. Let me know what you're doing. The fact of the matter is, you have to, we're in this together. No more wild, cowboy shit. It's like, oh, so what are we going to do now, boss? A whole bunch of wild cowboy shit. I'm butchering it, but it was basically like cowboy shit. But yeah, they break into New Age. Time limit, like, we try to get as much as we can. And I love that they were about to pull off Just Without Reacher. And he's like, wow, can't believe you were going to leave me. And it's just like, Dixon literally didn't want to leave. But they're just like, yeah, he gave us an order. And even just Neely being like, asshole. It's like, I think he was being a little jokey, but still. But they ultimately, Reacher ended up, along with taking a whole bunch of files, they ended up taking a company, he took a photo from it was a company photo, and we see Langston, but we also see Swan there, and you're like, okay, so he was a part of this company. So that's where I kept bringing up, I was like, there's no way Swan's not, Swan has to be alive, because we found, yes, there's a possibility that the body dropped, but it's like, once again, Reacher was so wrong about it last season, kind of on the twofold front. He was certain he thought Paul was dead. He wasn't. So he was so certain about Finley being a divorcee and not a widower. Then it's like, but he was wrong on both of those counts, and I figured he'd be wrong about Swan. So I just didn't know what role Swan had in all of this, because he didn't come back. So I was like, either Swan broke and they got information from him and they kept him. Turns out he's in the middle of this. But the thing is, just because he's connected to New Age doesn't necessarily mean that he ratted out his team or whatever, because it's like, yeah, he worked with the people who are currently trying to kill us, but maybe it's just like Swan's unaware. Because once again, they're like, he wouldn't let his dog die unless he couldn't come back. So either he knew the bridges were burnt, like, why not take your dog with you? Maybe it's registered and he knew that someone could track it, or just, I think it's a situation of, this situation's going beyond what Swan was aware of. He probably, that's where I was like, not unless Swan has something to do with Orozco and Sanchez's death, because they were getting too close. Because that is the interesting thing. If you remember last episode, Sanchez's girlfriend brought up, like, yeah, they did bring up Swan's name. Maybe they brought up Swan's name because this is all connected to the company he's associated with. They're probably trying to determine whether or not they could trust Swan, because they don't know if he's a part of this or not. And I think in the end, he's not going to be. I think his allegiance to this is still going to be the 110, but either he's being forced into this situation, or he's completely unaware of all the terrible shit they're up to, that they're killing his former team type of thing. So, willing to give Swan the benefit of the doubt, but we'll ultimately have to wait to see. Obviously, going forward, I'm getting to these late, but obviously, these episodes are going to be released week to week, so I don't think they're going to be doubling up. I think it's only going to be one episode a week, so we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I'm wanting to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.